I sat in the leather chair across from the lawyer's desk, my hands trembling so badly I had to clasp them in my lap. At 67, I'd spent the last 3 years caring for my husband Thomas through his final illness, bathing him when he couldn't stand, feeding him when his hands shook too much to hold a spoon, holding him through the night when the pain made him cry. 2 weeks ago, I'd buried him. Now, I sat in this cold office wondering how I'd survive without him. Eleanor Hale, my mother-in-law, sat beside me in expensive black silk that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She hadn't visited Thomas once during those terrible final months, claiming the hospital smell upset her. But she'd made sure to arrive first today, bringing both my stepsons. Mr. Patterson, the lawyer, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Before we proceed with the will reading, Mrs. Eleanor Hale has requested a family discussion. My stomach dropped. Eleanor turned to face me, her expression colder than I'd ever seen. Clara, we've discussed this as a family. We believe a vote is appropriate regarding distribution of Thomas's estate. A vote. My voice came out as a whisper. Yes, those of us who are actual blood relatives will decide what's fair. I looked at my stepsons. Brian stared at his expensive shoes. Michael couldn't meet my eyes. You were his caretaker, Eleanor continued, each word like a slap. Not his true partner. Certainly not family. The vote was quick and brutal. Eleanor raised her hand. Brian hesitated, then raised his. Michael last, his face twisted with guilt. 3 votes to exclude me from everything Thomas had wanted me to have. This can't be legal, I managed to say through the tears burning my eyes. Mr. Patterson looked genuinely pained. Mrs. Clara Hale, I must inform you that the will does contain certain provisions. But nothing, Eleanor interrupted. We're his blood family. She's just a woman who married him late in life. This is settled. I stood on shaking legs, too devastated to fight. As I gathered my purse with trembling hands, I noticed Mr. Patterson's eyes flick toward his desk drawer. A sealed envelope sat partially visible, and I could see my name written in Thomas's familiar handwriting. My breath caught. That was his handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Mr. Patterson saw me notice. His hand moved to close the drawer, but he hesitated, fingers trembling. Eleanor was already leaving, her sons following obediently. Mrs. Hale, Mr. Patterson said quietly, perhaps you could return tomorrow, alone. Something in his desperate tone made me nod, though I barely understood through my grief. I returned the next morning, crying so hard I could barely drive. Everything hurt. My chest felt hollow where my heart used to be. Mr. Patterson locked the door behind me. What I'm about to do could cost me everything, but I can't participate in this injustice. He pulled out the sealed envelope. 3 weeks before his death, Thomas came to me. He'd overheard Eleanor planning something. He suspected they'd try to cut you out. Mr. Patterson's voice shook with guilt. Alina threatened my firm with a lawsuit if I didn't misplace this. I was a coward and agreed, but I can't live with that anymore. He handed me the envelope. Inside was Thomas's letter, and I broke down completely reading his words. My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, my family has betrayed you as I feared. I'm so sorry. I should have been stronger. But you are strong, stronger than you know. The key inside will lead you to truth. Stay strong, my love. You're not alone. All my love forever, Thomas. A small brass key was attached. SU2 847. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Thomas had known. He'd known they'd do this, and it had broken his heart. It took me 2 days to find storage unit 2847. My hands shook so badly, I could barely fit the key in the lock. Inside sat a dozen boxes labeled Hale Family Records. Keep confidential. I opened the first box and found years of financial documents, all meticulously organized. But it was the thick folder labeled ELEANOR private that made me sink to the concrete floor. Thomas had documented everything. Years of Alina's unethical financial manipulation. Shell companies hiding assets. Manipulated business valuations. Offshore accounts avoiding estate obligations. Nothing clearly illegal, but deeply, profoundly wrong. On the inside cover, Thomas had written, "If they turn on Clara after I'm gone, she'll need this. I pray she never does. But if she's reading this, I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to stop them. Protect yourself, my darling. You deserve everything. T." I sobbed into my hands, grieving all over again. He'd carried this burden alone, trying to protect me even as he was dying. 3 days later, Alina appeared at my door wearing fake sympathy, like a mask. "Clara, dear, perhaps we were too harsh. Grief makes us all emotional." I said nothing, just watched her performance. "I'd like to offer you a settlement. A modest monthly stipend, quite generous, actually, if you'll sign away future claims. Clean break." The papers were already prepared, waiting for my signature. "I need time," I said quietly. "Of course." Alina set her purse on my table. "I'll leave these with you." After she left, I noticed she'd forgotten her purse. I stared at it for a long moment, conscience wrestling with desperation. Finally, I looked inside. What I found made my blood run cold. A draft contract dated 2 weeks before Thomas died, outlining their plan to exclude me completely. They'd been preparing this betrayal before he'd even taken his last breath. While I was feeding him, bathing him, loving him, they were plotting to erase me. My stepsons reacted differently when I refused Alina's offer. Brian called, furious. "You're being unreasonable. Mother's trying to be generous." "I was married to your father for 12 years, I said, my voice breaking. "I held his hand when he died. Don't I deserve respect?" "You deserve what we decide to give you." He hung up. But Michael called that night, voice urgent and scared. "Clara, we need to talk. Not on the phone. arrived, he looked terrified. She's hiding something big. I've seen her shredding documents late at night. She's terrified, and if it surfaces, we're all going down with her. What do you mean? I don't know exactly, but he stopped, staring at his phone. I have to go, she's calling. Don't trust anything she offers. There's always a trap. He left quickly, leaving me more frightened than before. That sleepless night, I studied the brass key. Something about its shape felt familiar. Then I remembered the cabin, Thomas's refuge, the desk with the locked drawer I'd never seen opened. The next morning, I drove 2 hours with shaking hands. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a leather notebook titled Hale Family Asset Management, Private Records. Thomas had documented everything in painful detail. How Alina had manipulated trusts to avoid proper inheritance distribution. How she'd hidden money in offshore accounts. How she deceived everyone. Then I saw my name on page 47. Clara Hale, contingency beneficiary. If primary distribution fails due to family misconduct, all assets transfer to Clara as moral executor. He'd protected me. Even knowing he was dying, he'd protected me. I cried until I had no tears left. 2 weeks later, an eviction notice arrived. Alina was forcing me from the home Thomas and I had shared. I sat on our bed holding the notice, remembering every precious moment. Morning coffees, evening walks, his hand in mine. The quiet love that had sustained me. They were taking even this away. That afternoon, I called Harriet Cole, the attorney Thomas had mentioned in his letter. Harriet listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned forward. Do you have Thomas's documents? I nodded. All of them. Everything. Harriet smiled, and it wasn't kind. It was predatory. Mrs. Hale, they have no idea what you're sitting on. We're going to file a counterclaim that will change everything. For the first time since Thomas died, I felt something other than grief. I felt hope. Harriet spread the documents across her table, studying each page intensely. Here's what we have, she finally said. These don't prove crimes. Alina was too clever. But they expose years of malicious deception and bad faith dealings. Enormous leverage. Leverage for what? A civil settlement. A large one. She tapped one document. This shows Alina deliberately concealed assets. These show manipulated valuations. This notebook proves Thomas explicitly wanted you protected. She looked at me directly. What do you actually want, Clara? Money or justice? I thought about Alina never visiting Thomas. About her planning this betrayal before he was gone. About her calling me just a caretaker. Both, I said firmly. Harriet smiled. Then let's give them both. Brian called 45 minutes after receiving our counterclaim. Screaming so loud, I held the phone away from my ear. What have you done? You're suing Mother. I'm asking for what Thomas wanted me to have. You're destroying this family. I heard shouting in the background. Aliner's shrill voice. After everything we gave her. Then Brian's voice changed, frightened, not angry. Mother, did you forge my signature on these trust documents? More shouting, a door slamming. Brian came back on, quiet and shaky. Clara, I need to talk to you. Alone. Why? Because I think Mother's been lying to all of us. Brian came that evening looking terrified. Nothing like the confident man who'd voted against me. I didn't know, he said immediately. These documents show my signature on things I never signed. Transfers I never approved. She forged my name, Clara. He pulled out a flash drive. Mother keeps this in her safe. I got the combination years ago. I haven't looked, I was too scared, but I think you should have it. He placed it on my table like it was dangerous. I'm sorry, Clara. I just wanted Mother's approval. I was too blind to see what she really was. After he left, I stared at that flash drive for a long time before plugging it in. The flash drive contained audio files, dozens of them. I opened the most recent, dated 3 days before Thomas died. Aliner's voice. The old fool is finally dying. Once he's gone, we push Clara out immediately. She's old and helpless. We'll strip her of everything. Brian's voice. Mother, that seems cruel. Cruel. She married your father for money. We're taking back what's ours. I listened to file after file, shaking with rage and grief. Aliner had recorded herself planning everything. I called Harriet immediately. After listening to 3 files, Harriet was glowing. This is leverage, Clara. Clean, legal, devastating leverage. What do? We make an official demand. Full disclosure. And we make clear what happens if she refuses. Aliner's response was vicious. She published an opinion piece in the newspaper, Gold Diggers and the Elderly, one family story. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. The article painted me as a manipulator who'd seduced a vulnerable widower. I expected isolation, shame. Instead, my neighbors started appearing at my door. Mrs. Chen from across the hall. We know who you are. We saw you caring for Thomas. That woman has no idea what she's talking about. The Johnsons brought casserole and a petition they'd started, documenting my character and devotion to Thomas. Within 3 days, 17 neighbors had signed statements defending me. But Aliner called, voice vibrating with rage. I will ruin you completely, Clara. I will destroy your reputation so thoroughly, no one will speak your name without disgust. I just want what Thomas wanted me to have, I said quietly. You'll get nothing but misery. Aliner scheduled an emergency family meeting, summoning her sons. What she didn't know was that Michael had invited Harriet and me. We arrived 15 minutes late. Aliner's voice carried from the library. We present a united front, deny everything, and crush her pathetic legal action. We walked in. Aliner went pale. What is she doing here? I invited them, Michael said quietly. Because I'm tired of lies, Mother. Harriet set a speaker on the table. Mrs. Hale, listen to something. She pressed play. Alina's recorded voice. She's old and helpless. We'll strip her of everything. Brian's face crumbled. You said those recordings didn't exist. Harriet played another, then another, each one more damning. Alina sat frozen, her mask cracking. You don't know what you've unleashed, she whispered. The silence was deafening. Then Alina laughed, a broken, brittle sound. You want truth? Fine. The Hale family business is failing. Has been for 3 years. We're drowning in debt. Both sons stared in shock. Your father knew. He wanted to sell everything, pay debts honorably, retire simply. But I couldn't allow that. Her voice rose hysterically. Do you know what it's like to have status? To be someone? So yes, I manipulated books, hid assets, created offshore accounts. We needed that inheritance to keep the business alive, to keep our reputation. Mother, Michael whispered, what have you done? What I had to do. If these documents leak, we lose everything. The business collapses. We're ruined. She turned to me desperately. If you push this, you destroy them too. Thomas's sons. Is that what you want? I looked at both men, lost and betrayed. What I want, I said quietly, is what I've always wanted. Respect. Michael immediately declared. He was done protecting Alina's secrets. I'm with Clara. Whatever she's owed, she should get. Brian hesitated, then nodded. This has gone too far. Both sons stood against their mother for the first time. Alina's face contorted with rage. After everything I've done for you, after I sacrificed everything, you sacrificed Dad's wishes, Michael said. You sacrificed Clara's dignity. You sacrificed our integrity. Alina's eyes went cold. You want to abandon me? Fine, but I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about precious Clara. What truth? Harriet asked sharply. That she abused Thomas in his final months. Isolated him from family. Manipulated a dying man. Alina's smile was cruel. I have a nurse who will testify. I'll destroy her before I let her take what's mine. My blood ran cold. Harriet's response was immediate. Before you make accusations you'll regret, you should know Thomas recorded a video statement 3 months before his death. Alina's confidence faltered. What video? Harriet set up her laptop. Thomas appeared on screen, frail but clear-eyed. My name is Thomas Hale. I'm making this recording of my own free will, with full mental capacity. I want to address fears about what might happen after my death. He paused. I love my sons, but I know my family. I fear they'll betray Clara after I'm gone. His voice strengthened. Let me be clear. Clara has been devoted, kind, selfless. She's cared for me with love and dignity. If my family turns on her, they're acting against my explicit wishes. He looked into the camera. Clara, if you're watching this, they betrayed you as I feared. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stop them, but you deserve everything. You were the best thing that happened to me. He wiped his eyes. To whoever's watching with Clara, probably a lawyer, please protect her. She trusted me, and I'm trusting you. The video ended. Alina sat stunned. Both sons were crying. That's the man you're dishonoring, Harriet said quietly. Now, I suggest mediation before this gets uglier. The mediation took place downtown. Ms. Washington, the mediator, presided with careful neutrality. Alina arrived with an expensive lawyer, who immediately painted me as a gold digger. But Alina played the grieving mother brilliantly. I loved Thomas dearly. This isn't about money. It's about preserving my son's legacy for his children. Clara is lovely, but she was only in Thomas's life briefly. We're his blood family. She was convincing, playing the victim perfectly. But Harriet was better. She methodically presented every document, every recording, every piece of evidence showing Alina's manipulation and lies. The mediator's neutral expression gradually shifted to disgust. Mrs. Alina Hale, these recordings of you planning to strip Mrs. Clara Hale are disturbing, as is evidence of hidden assets and manipulated distributions. Alina's lawyer tried objecting, but Ms. Washington raised her hand. I need time to review this carefully. We'll reconvene in 3 days. On the second night, Alina appeared at my apartment alone. No lawyer, no sons, just her, looking smaller and older. May I come in? Against better judgment, I let her. I want to make a real offer. Drop everything, all legal action. In exchange, I'll give you the full inheritance Thomas intended. The house, the accounts, all of it. Just let this end quietly. It sounded too good. Why now? Because I'm tired, Clara. This is destroying my sons. Because I realize I can't win. I studied her face, looking for the trap. I need to think about it. Alina stood to leave. At the door, she turned. By the way, have you found the account yet? The one Thomas opened in Switzerland. My blood turned to ice. I'd never mentioned any Swiss account. How do you know about that? Alina's eyes widened, realizing her mistake. Thomas mentioned it once. We both knew that was a lie. I called Harriet immediately. Alina knows about a Swiss account I haven't told anyone about. How could she possibly know? Unless she's had access to Thomas's private files all along. Using Alina's slip, Harriet subpoenaed Alina's personal financial records. What we discovered was stunning. Alina hadn't just hidden assets from me. She'd hidden assets from her own sons for decades. Secret accounts in the Cayman Islands containing over $2 million. Investment properties in 3 states. Stock portfolios her sons had no idea existed. All legally owned. All technically proper. But all deliberately concealed from the family who trusted her. When we showed Brian and Michael, their faces went through shock, betrayal, and cold fury. She's been lecturing us about family loyalty, Michael said, voice shaking. And she's been hoarding money for herself. Money from Dad's business, Brian added. Money she convinced him to invest wisely, but moved into her personal accounts. Both sons looked at me with apology. We're testifying on your side, Michael said. Whatever you need, Mother's done. The mediation resumed with Alina flanked by her lawyer, but her sons sitting on my side. The shock on her face was devastating. Ms. Washington wasted no time. Mrs. Alina Hale, did you deliberately hide financial resources from estate distribution? Alina's lawyer started answering, but Ms. Washington cut him off. I asked Mrs. Hale directly. Alina sat silent. Then something broke. Yes, she whispered. I hid the accounts, moved the assets, everything they're accusing me of. Her lawyer looked stricken. I did it to protect our family legacy, to ensure we maintained our position, Your control, Michael interrupted. You did it to maintain control. Alina looked at her sons with genuine pain. I did it for you. No, Mother, Brian said. Everything was for you, for your ego. We were just props. The mediator cleared her throat. Mrs. Clara Hale, what outcome do you seek? Everyone turned to me. I'd spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about what I really wanted. Money would be nice, security in my final years. But looking at Alina's broken expression and her son's wounded faces, I realized money wasn't what mattered. I don't want their money, I said quietly. Alina's head snapped up in shock. What I want is simple. I want my home back, the home Thomas and I shared. I looked at Alina. I want a formal written apology from you, acknowledging what you did. Not for me, for Thomas. He deserved better. And I want to oversee the scholarship fund Thomas created for nursing students. The one you never established. I'll make sure it actually helps people. I sat back. That's all, the house, the apology, the scholarship fund. Keep everything else. Alina looked completely stunned. That's all you want. Respect, I said. I've always just wanted respect. Ms. Washington drew up the agreement that afternoon. Alina would sign a formal apology, acknowledging her treatment of me and manipulation of Thomas's estate. The house would transfer to me immediately, and I'd receive authority over the Thomas Hale Nursing Scholarship Fund with a $500,000 endowment. Alina's hand trembled as she signed the apology letter. I, Alina Hale, acknowledge that I treated Clara Hale with profound disrespect following my son's death. I manipulated his estate against his wishes. I attempted to deny her the dignity my son wanted her to have. I behaved dishonorably, and I offer my sincerest apologies. Watching her sign felt surreal. This woman who'd seemed so powerful, reduced to writing an apology she never imagined she'd make. After signing, both sons approached me. Thank you, Michael said quietly, for not destroying us with her. You had every right. Your father loved you both, I said. He wouldn't have wanted me to hurt you. Brian hugged me for the first time. I'm sorry we didn't protect you. I'm sorry we chose her over you. The apology letter was filed as public record. Within days, someone leaked it to the newspaper. The social collapse was swift and brutal. The newspaper that published Alina's gold digger piece now ran. Prominent family matriarch forced to apologize for elder abuse. Public opinion turned completely. Her charitable boards asked her to resign. The country club revoked her membership. Friends who'd stood beside her for decades suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Meanwhile, I became a quiet hero in the senior community, someone who'd stood up to family bullying with grace. The senior center asked me to speak about elder rights. A law school asked me to participate in a panel. Neighbors I'd never met stopped me to shake my hand. I didn't want fame, but I accepted because I realized my story could help others. 2 months later, Alina requested a final meeting. She came to my home, legally mine now, and stood on my doorstep, looking genuinely humbled. May I come in? I made tea while Alina sat in my living room, looking around at the space where Thomas and I had built our life. This is harder than I thought, she began. Coming here, seeing you in his space. It was never just your family's space, I said gently. It was Thomas's and mine. She nodded slowly. I know, and it terrified me. Why? Alina was quiet for a long moment. Because he loved you more than he ever loved our legacy, more than the business or reputation. He looked at you with complete peace and joy. Tears ran down her face. I spent 50 years building our family name, making us important. Then he met you, and suddenly none of it mattered to him. Just you, just simple happiness. She looked at me. I hated you for that, for showing me that everything I dedicated my life to meant nothing to my own son. Alina, I said quietly, he didn't stop loving you. He just found a different kind of happiness. I know. And instead of being happy for him, I tried to destroy what he loved most. We sat in silence, 2 old women who'd caused each other such pain. I don't expect forgiveness, Alina said, but I want you to know I understand now what I took from you, and I'm genuinely sorry. For the first time, I believed her. I forgive you, I said, not because you deserve it, but because Thomas would have wanted me to, and because I'm tired of carrying anger. After Alina left, I sat holding Thomas's letter. Trust yourself, he'd written. You're not alone, you're not powerless. He'd been right. I'd never been powerless. I just needed to remember my own strength. I looked around my home, truly mine now, and felt his presence like a warm embrace. I honored your trust, I whispered. I stood up for myself. I stood up for us. And finally, for the first time since he'd died, I felt at peace. They tried to erase me, to make me invisible, to treat me like I didn't matter. But I'd mattered to Thomas. And that had been enough to give me courage to fight for myself. In the end, I hadn't needed their approval or their inheritance. I just needed to remember that respect isn't given, it's claimed. And I'd claimed mine.